So multi-factor authentication is provided in Azure Active Directory through an authentication provider, which is almost circular if you think about it. But that's an important concept because there is a built-in multi-factor authentication provider that's available to you if you're using Azure Active Directory. And how available it is kind of depends on factors such as, are you using Premium? If you're using standard Azure Active Directory, the multi-factor authentication provider is available for your Azure Active Directory administrative accounts. So for example, global administrators. Okay? If you're using Azure Active Directory Premium, then the multi-factor authentication provider is available to all accounts. So you can set that up for anything that's using SSO through Azure Active Directory. Right? And as mentioned, it can actually even extend down into the on-premises experience. Okay, but this is pluggable. In fact, there are third-party multi-factor authentication systems that can be plugged into and used with Azure Active Directory. Okay, so, but we're going to talk about what's there with the built-in one, the one you get if you have Azure. So if I have Azure, remember multi-factor authentication is basically I have to provide a second verification that I am authenticating. Right? And the first factor, or the first factor is generally going to be me going in and putting in a username and password. Right? And then based on various circumstances, and again, this is actually something that's pretty highly configurable, right? I'm going to be prompted to authenticate a second way. And within the built-in provider for Azure Active Directory multi-factor authentication, there are three ways. The first is through an app. And this is actually pretty cool. There are apps that work across Windows Phone, here we'll get the Windows there too, Windows Phone, Android, and iOS. And this is actually not just for Azure Active Directory. This is for any Microsoft-based multi-factor authentication. And essentially, it will give you a code and you put it in and it works. It's very, very simple. Okay? The apps send a notification to the end user, and then the end user can authenticate or deny the request through the app itself. It's very cool stuff. Okay, and you can get a one-time passcode that's used with the username and password for each login attempt. And there's variations that you can set up with that. Okay, also, and this is the one, if you see a demonstration of this, particularly a Microsoft demonstration of this, they're probably going to use the automated telephone call, mostly because it's just really cool. Right? I try to authenticate, and then the phone rings, and I get this very nice automated voice telling me that I've just tried to authenticate. Is this okay? You hit a button to say, yes, it's fine, and then you're authenticated. Cool stuff. The other alternative is text messages. Right? The system can send you a text message, and it's going to have a code, and you're going to be prompted to put that code in. And again, and the idea being that, okay, if somebody gets your username and password, hopefully they don't also have your cell phone at the same time. Okay? Or they don't, they're not at your place of residence or business, whatever you have as your telephone number. And so it's not foolproof, obviously, but it does give a much higher level of security than simply having a username and password. And certainly, if you are architecting a new application, a new authentication scheme, I strongly recommend looking at multi-factor authentication. It's almost what I can't say it's a necessity because I don't get to make those decisions, but it's pretty close to what I would consider a necessity for modern authentication purposes.